Today we're going to talk about an artist by the name of Joan Miro. He was born in Barcelona, Spain in the year 1893, and he passed away in 1983 when he was 90 years old. He passed away on Christmas Day. Joan Miro was one of the most popular artists in the history of Spain. He was a huge part of the surrealism movement of art. Surrealism is kind of taking the word real and super and combining them. So it's kind of like super real, surrealism, okay? It was founded in Paris in 1924 by the French poet Andre Breton. And they wanted to kind of make things like really big, really extreme, and their belief was that surrealism was just as real life. Just because we didn't understand or live in that plane, it didn't make it any less real. It's kind of a confusing idea, but it was almost like they were making like another dimension or pretending like there was like another world, okay? So it's just kind of an interesting thing. So instead of painting things that looked realistic, it was supposed to be like another world in and like of itself. And so that was why it's very abstract, the kind of artwork that they did. So sometimes people can describe surrealism as being even violent or cruel or sometimes magical. It just kind of depends on the painting, but it definitely isn't meant to be painted or drawn to look like real life. So anyway, he grew up in Barcelona, and later in his life during the Spanish Civil War in Spain, he moved to Paris in 1936, but he moved back to Barcelona, Spain in 1942 and settled there in his the home that he had grown up in. He did get married and have children. I know he at least had one daughter. I don't know how many children he had. So he came to America for the first time when he was 47 years old, and he spent 8 months in Ohio painting a mural in a hotel. So that was the very first time that he'd come. He had had galleries that had sold his artwork and done exhibits in like New York City, but he had never been here himself. So that's about the extent of his tie to the States. So he spent most of his time in Europe and specifically in Barcelona. So let's talk a little bit about this painting. It's kind of interesting because it actually has a little bit more of a form to it than I think maybe some of his other artwork does. Now here's something interesting. It's called composition. Almost all of his paintings are called composition, and that was kind of intentional. He doesn't want to give it a name because he doesn't want you to have any preconceived notions about what it is, right? If he titles it trees, mountains, lake, bird watching, whatever it is, people are going to start to look for specific elements in the painting. But because he just names it composition, you don't really know. So when I look at this, I see these around, and I kind of see stars. Right here, I maybe see some like mountain peaks or something. These kind of right here can be difficult. These like teeny little strokes, they might be trees. I know these are blue. They could be clouds. They could really be anything. But the point of surrealism is he would just kind of paint whatever he was feeling and more kind of trying to invoke that instead of actual, places or things. So I want you guys to start thinking in your head what you're seeing in this painting, like shapes, colors, if it makes you feel a certain way, or if you think maybe he was trying to paint a certain thing, if you see something, right? But you can see he uses lots of shapes. We're going to see kind of like triangles here, like a big oval, right? Maybe we've got some lines. So kind of just take a look. This one has a lot of elements of shapes in it. All right. So he, like I said, he was born in 1893, and the surrealism movement was something that he kind of helped with that poet that we talked about, Andre Breton. And so that was like around the year like 1920. So he would have been pretty young still. He was about 27 years old when surrealism really started to take off. And leading up to that, he was doing some art school in Paris in 1919, and that's when he started meeting other artists and kind of started this movement in 1920. Funny enough, he had actually tried art school earlier in the year 1918 and had just done so poorly, and he hated it, and he dropped out for a little while and did something else, but realized the art was really his passion, and so he eventually ended up coming back to it. So he had started taking art classes when he was really younger. He started at the age of 7 doing drawings and taking art classes. His father never wanted him to be an artist. He didn't want him to go to school for it, but turns out he was pretty good, so it worked out. His father was I believe his father was maybe like a watchmaker, I think. So a completely different kind of life than what Johan ended up living. So a lot of his artwork is supposed to be kind of like fantasy. That's kind of the idea of surrealism, that it's kind of hard to put an actual form on this, but it's more of what you can't really put into words, of how it makes you feel. And like I said, almost trying to transport you into a different world. So I hope that you guys learned a little bit about surrealism. I know it's kind of a confusing concept, but it's, but it's kind of an interesting way. I don't know that this is maybe the best explanation, but just off the top of my head, I'm kind of thinking like in Mary Poppins, where Bert draws the sidewalk chalk, and he, creates these landscapes, and they jump into it. And it's when they get there, they're the only thing that's human, and everything else is cartoon. So it felt very real to them in the movie, and obviously that's made up. But I think that might have been kind of the idea that surrealism was going for, that it was almost like it could be a portal to a whole other reality, or super realism reality, right? So just kind of an interesting idea to think about how much they were thinking about, their life and what it meant, and the reality of their existence. So I hope that you learned a little bit about Johan Miro today, and that you enjoyed his artwork, composition, and I hope to learn about more art with you guys at another time. Thanks. Bye.